The hall was never meant for something important. It was a plain place with beige walls, long rows of folding chairs, and lights that buzzed softly above everyone's heads. People walked in slowly, some holding coffee cups, others carrying bags and coats. A few laughed, a few checked their phones. It felt like any other event that would be forgotten by the end of the day. She sat near the side of the stage, hands folded in her lap, watching people find their seats. She did not stand out. Her clothes were simple. Her hair was pulled back without much effort. If someone looked at her for more than a second, they might think she was part of the staff, or maybe someone waiting for a friend. No one guessed she would matter. The event itself had no strong purpose. It was a local gathering, half performance, half community meeting. Some people were there to support someone they knew. Others just came because it was free and close to home. The sound system had been acting up earlier, and the organizers were trying to keep things moving while they fixed small problems. On the stage, a few chairs were set up along with a piano that had seen better days. Its surface was scratched, and one key near the middle made a soft clicking sound when pressed. The piano had been moved many times over the years, from room to room, event to event. It had played for children, for practice sessions, for moments that barely mattered. She had noticed the piano the moment she walked in, not because it was special, but because it was familiar. Pianos like that were everywhere. Old halls, old schools, old buildings that held memories, but no one talked about them anymore. One of the organizers walked across the stage with a microphone, tapping it gently. The sound echoed in short bursts. He sighed, shook his head, and spoke to another organizer near the edge of the stage. They were behind schedule, and the room was growing restless. People shifted in their chairs. Someone coughed. A phone rang and was quickly silenced. A few whispers floated through the air. That was when one of the organizers noticed her. She had been sitting quietly, not trying to be seen, but someone remembered that she had mentioned earlier that day that she could play. It was not said with pride. It was said the way people say things that don't matter much, like mentioning they can cook a little or fix a loose handle. The organizer leaned down and spoke to her in a low voice. "Would you mind playing something?" he asked, just something simple. "We need a few minutes." She looked up, surprised. Her first thought was to say no. She had not come for that. She had come to listen, to sit in the back, to leave quietly when it was over. Playing in front of people was not part of her plan. "What kind of thing?" she asked. "Oh, anything," he said quickly. "Just a short melody. Nothing big. Just to fill the space." Fill the space. The words stayed with her. She nodded slowly, even though her chest felt tight. She stood up, smoothing her clothes with her hands. The walk to the stage felt longer than it really was. Each step echoed inside her head. No one clapped when she walked up. No one stopped talking right away. She was not announced. She was not introduced. She was just someone stepping onto the stage because there was empty time that needed to be covered. She sat at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. The wood felt cool under her fingers. She rested her hands on her knees for a moment, breathing in and out. She could hear the room clearly now. Chairs creaking. Someone laughing quietly near the back. The hum of the lights. She placed her fingers lightly on the keys but did not play yet. Her mind drifted, as it often did when she was near a piano. She remembered other rooms. Smaller rooms. Quiet rooms. Times when music was not for anyone else. Times when it was the only thing that made sense. She had learned to play without much guidance. No big lessons. No fancy teachers. Just time, repetition, and a need she could never explain. Music had always been something she went to, not something she shared. But now she was here. Someone in the front row glanced at their watch. Another person leaned toward their friend and whispered something with a small smile. No one was waiting for magic. They were waiting for background noise. She lifted her hands again, hovering above the keys. Her fingers trembled slightly. She pressed them together, then relaxed them, the way she had taught herself to do when nerves tried to take over. The organizer stood off to the side, arms crossed, clearly focused on the schedule more than the moment. He gave her a quick nod, the kind that said, "Whenever you're ready." She nodded back, almost without thinking. This was supposed to be simple. She thought about playing something easy, something almost forgettable, a melody that would float through the room without asking for attention. That was what they wanted. That was what she had been asked to give. But as her fingers touched the keys, she felt something else rise inside her. Not excitement, not fear, something deeper, something quiet but firm. She paused. The room did not notice the pause. To them, It was just another delay, another small moment in an ordinary day. She took one more breath. Her shoulders relaxed. Her back straightened slightly, not from confidence, but from habit. She did not look at the audience. She did not look at the organizers. She looked only at the keys, and in that moment, before a single note was played, everything she had lived, everything she had held inside, sat waiting just beneath her fingertips. The hall was still noisy. People were still distracted. No one knew that anything was about to change. They had asked her for a simple melody. They had no idea what they were really asking for. Her fingers finally moved. The first note was soft, almost unsure. It slipped into the room like a quiet thought, easy to miss. A few people kept talking. Someone near the aisle adjusted their seat. The sound blended into the noise of the hall, doing exactly what everyone expected it to do. She played a second note, then a third, simple, slow, nothing dramatic. Her hands moved with care, as if she were testing the space between the keys and the air. The melody felt small at first, like something meant only for her. But then she let the note stretch just a little longer. The sound changed, not in volume, but in feeling. It carried warmth, like a memory that shows up without warning. One person in the middle row stopped tapping their foot. Another lowered their phone, eyes lifting toward the stage without realizing why. She stayed focused on the keys. Her face was calm, but inside, everything was awake. Each note reminded her of long evenings spent alone, practicing not to impress anyone, but to understand what she felt when words failed her. The melody remained simple, but it began to breathe. She added a gentle shift, a turn that wasn't expected. It wasn't complicated. Anyone listening closely could follow it, but it asked for attention now. It asked people to slow down. The whispers faded. A few heads turned fully toward the stage. Someone in the back leaned forward, elbows on knees. The hall did not fall silent all at once. The quiet came in pieces. She felt it happening. Though she did not look up, she could sense the room changing, the way she always could when music reached someone deeper than sound. Her hands no longer trembled. She pressed the keys with more confidence, not louder, just clearer. The melody repeated, but this time it carried weight. Each note landed, stayed, then gently moved aside for the next. A memory passed through her mind. A small room with thin walls. A piano that was out of tune. Nights when the world outside felt too heavy. Music had been her way of staying upright when everything else pulled her down. She had never played this melody for anyone before. It wasn't written on paper. It didn't have a name. It was something that came to her during quiet hours, shaped by moments she never talked about. She had always thought of it as private, but here it was, filling a hall that had not been ready for it. Someone in the front row held their breath without noticing. A woman near the aisle wiped her eye quickly, embarrassed, unsure why she felt moved. Even the organizers stopped checking their watches. The piano's old keys clicked softly now and then, but instead of breaking the moment, the sound made it feel real, honest, like something fragile being shared. She allowed the melody to rise slightly, not to impress, but to release something she had carried for a long time. The notes grew closer together, then pulled apart again, like a quiet conversation. The hall was nearly silent now. No phones, no whispers, no shifting chairs. People were listening, not because they had been told to, but because something inside them asked them to. She felt a strange calm settle over her. The nerves she had felt earlier were gone, replaced by a steady focus. This was familiar territory. This was where she had always felt safest. The melody slowed again, returning to its simple beginning, but it was no longer background sound. It had become a presence. She glanced up for the first time. The sight surprised her. Every face she could see was turned toward her. Some were still, some were softened by emotion. No one looked bored. No one looked impatient. Even those who had come with no interest now seemed caught in something they did not expect. She looked back at the keys, hard, steady, and continued. A deeper note entered the melody, grounding it. The sound filled the space between the rows of chairs, resting briefly before moving on. It felt like a truth being spoken quietly, without asking for agreement. She remembered being told once that simple things were not important, that real skill had to be loud, fast, or impressive. Sitting there now, she knew that was never true. Simple things reached further. The melody began to tell its story more clearly, not with words, but with feeling. Loss without pain, hope without noise, strength without force. Someone near the back closed their eyes. The hall, once restless, now felt held together by the sound coming from the stage. Even the buzzing lights seemed quieter. She felt time stretch. She did not know how long she had been playing. Minutes felt like moments. The melody moved at its own pace, unbothered by schedules or plans. The organizer at the side of the stage lowered his arms. His expression had changed. He wasn't thinking about delays anymore. She added one final turn, gentle and clear. The melody began to come home. Her hands slowed. The notes grew farther apart. Each one lingered, as if saying goodbye. The last note was soft. It stayed in the air longer than expected. She lifted her fingers from the keys and rested her hands in her lap. No one moved. The silence that followed was different from the one before she played. It was full, heavy in a gentle way. No one wanted to break it. She sat still, unsure what to do next. This had never happened before. She had been asked for something simple. What she gave could not be taken back. The silence did not break right away. It stayed in a hall like a held breath. No one clapped. No one spoke. Even those who had not been paying attention before now sat still, unsure why their chests felt tight. The last notes seemed to linger, not in sound, but in feeling. She remained on the bench, hands resting quietly in her lap. Her shoulders felt light, as if something heavy had been set down. She did not smile. She did not look for approval. She simply waited. A chair creaked somewhere in the back. Then someone near the front stood up without thinking. The movement felt sudden in the quiet room. A few heads turned, then more people began to rise. Applause started slowly, uneven at first, as if people were unsure whether it was the right thing to do. The sound grew. It was not loud in a wild way. It was steady, full. Hands came together with purpose, not excitement. Some clapped while looking at the floor. Others watched her closely, as if trying to understand what had just happened. She stood up, surprised by how weak her knees felt. She gave a small nod, not a bow. Her eyes scanned the room briefly, then dropped again. Being seen like this felt strange. The organizer stepped forward, clapping too, his face still caught between confusion and awe. He leaned toward her and said something she could not hear over the sound. She nodded again, though she wasn't sure what he had said. The applause eventually faded, not because people wanted it to end, but because it felt complete. A quiet settled again. After this time, she stepped away from the piano and moved toward the side of the stage. Each step felt unreal, as if the floor had shifted slightly. She could feel eyes following her, but she did not look up. As she reached the edge of the stage, a woman near the aisle touched her arm gently. "Thank you," the woman said. The words were simple, but her voice shook. She paused, met the woman's eyes, and nodded. "You're welcome," she said softly. That was all. She returned to her seat, heart still steady, but something inside her had changed. It felt like standing in a familiar room after rearranging the furniture. Everything was the same, yet different. The event continued, but it struggled to regain its earlier rhythm. Speakers talked, announcements were made, but the energy had shifted. People listened differently now. Some seemed distracted, replaying the melody in their minds. She noticed it in small ways. Someone glanced at her from across the room, then looked away quickly. A few people whispered, not with boredom, but with curiosity. She heard words like unexpected and beautiful drift past her. She folded her hands again and stared at the floor, grounding herself. Moments like this were dangerous, not because of fame or attention, but because they could wake something inside her that she had learned to keep quiet. Hope had always felt risky. She remembered other times when people had noticed her music. Once, years ago, someone had heard her playing through an open window and told her she should perform more. Another time, a teacher had paused outside a practice room and listened longer than planned. Those moments had glowed briefly, then faded. Life had taught her not to build dreams on short reactions. Still, this felt different. When the event finally ended, people stood slowly, gathering their things. No one rushed for the exits. Conversations were quiet, thoughtful. A few people approached her, stopping a respectful distance away, unsure if it was right to speak. "You have a gift," one person said. She smiled politely. "Thank you. Where did you learn to play like that?" Another asked. "Mostly on my own," she replied, then nodded, as if that made sense. An older man lingered, hands in his pockets. "That melody," he said carefully. "It reminded me of someone I lost." She met his eyes. "I'm glad it reached you." He nodded and walked away without another word. She did not tell him that the melody came from Lost to. Outside, the air felt cooler. The sky was dimming, painted with soft colors that faded into each other. She stepped away from the building and paused. Taking a deep breath, her phone buzzed. A message from someone she knew appeared on the screen. They had been in the audience. "I didn't know you could do that," the message read. She stared at it for a long moment before typing back. "I didn't plan to," she wrote. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. As she walked, memories surfaced. She remembered being younger, sitting at a piano late at night, keeping the sound low so no one would complain. She remembered playing through frustration, through doubt, through quiet joy. Music had never promised her anything. It had only stayed. That loyalty mattered. She reached a bench outside and sat down, letting the moment settle. Her hands rested on her knees, fingers moving slightly, as if still feeling the keys. For the first time, she wondered what would have happened if she had said no. The thought passed quickly. Inside the hall, someone mentioned her name to an organizer. "Who was she?" someone asked. "I don't know," the organizer replied. She was just filling time. The words echoed differently now. She stood up again and began walking home. The streetlights flickered on, one by one. The world moved at its normal pace, unaware that something quiet but meaningful had taken place. She felt no urge to rush. Later that night, she sat at her own piano. The room was small. The walls were thin. The keys felt familiar under her fingers. She played the melody again. Slower this time. It sounded the same. And yet, it didn't. Something had been released. She stopped playing and rested her forehead against the cool wood of the piano. A soft laugh escaped her, surprised and tired. She did not know what would come next, but for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to wonder. The days that followed did not arrive with noise or celebration. They came quietly, like they always had. She woke up the next morning expecting to feel different, maybe lighter, maybe nervous, but the room looked the same. The light through the window fell across the floor the same way it always did. Life had not changed overnight. She made herself a simple breakfast and sat at the small table by the window. Outside, people walked past, focused on their own routines. No one knew what had happened in the hall. No one stopped or stared. That steadiness was comforting. Later that day, her phone buzzed again. This time it was not just one message, a short note from someone who had been there. A longer one from someone who had heard about it afterward. Words like moving and unexpected appeared again. One message asked if she would ever play again. Somewhere public. She read them slowly, then set the phone down. She did not answer right away. Music had always belonged to quiet spaces. Sharing it felt like opening a door she had kept closed for a long time. Doors could be hard to close once opened. That afternoon, she returned to the hall, not for an event, just to pick up something she had left behind. The building was nearly empty now. Chairs were stacked. The stage lights were off. Without people, the space felt larger and smaller at the same time. She stood near the piano for a moment. The bench was pushed in. The lid was closed. It looked ordinary again. She placed a hand on the smooth surface, feeling the faint marks left by years of use. She remembered how it had sounded when the room went still. How the silence afterward had felt like respect. An organizer approached from the side hallway. "I was hoping I'd see you," he said. She turned, a little guarded. "I just came to grab something," she replied. He nodded. "Of course. I just wanted to say, thank you." That moment meant more than I expected. She considered his words carefully. "It meant something to me too," she said, surprising herself with the honesty. He hesitated. "We host events here all the time. Would you ever consider playing again? Not as background, as part of the program." The offer hung in the air. She felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Old doubts surfaced quickly. Questions without answers. "I don't know," she said gently. "That's okay," he replied. "Just know the door is open." She thanked him and left, walking home. She thought about the idea of being heard on purpose, of being invited, not as a filler, but as a reason. That night, she played again, not the same melody. Something new, uncertain. The notes came slowly, testing the space, asking questions instead of offering comfort. She stopped often, listening to the silence between sounds. She thought about the people in the hall, the way they had listened, the way some had stayed quiet long after the music ended. That kind of listening was rare. Over the next week, small changes appeared. A local community page shared a short post about the moment. Someone had recorded only a few seconds, enough to catch the shift in the room. The video was not perfect. The sound was uneven, but the feeling came through. Comments appeared. People recognized the hall. Some said they wished they had been there. Others said the clip made them stop scrolling. She watched the video once, then again. She noticed how still she looked at the piano, how careful, how present. She felt exposed and proud at the same time. More messages came. An invitation to play at a small gathering. A question about teaching lessons. Someone asked if the melody had a name. She answered a few. She ignored others. Each reply took effort. She began to understand that attention was not a single moment. It was a slow current, pulling gently but steadily. One evening, she met someone who had been in the audience that day. They recognized her in a quiet cafe. "I didn't want to interrupt," the person said, standing nearby. "I just wanted to say your music stayed with me." She thanked them, unsure what else to say. "It helped me get through a hard night," the person added. That landed deeper. She nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle in a new place. Music could be private, but once shared, it belonged to others too. At home, she opened an old notebook. Inside were loose thoughts, half-written melodies, moments she had never finished. She flipped through the pages slowly. For the first time, she did not see them as unfinished. She saw them as waiting. She spent hours at the piano, shaping sounds, letting silence guide her. She did not rush. She did not plan for an audience. She focused on honesty. Some days, doubt returned. Who was she to be listened to? On those days, she remembered the quiet hall, the way no one had asked her to be impressive, only real. That was enough. Another message arrived, this one simple. "Are you the one who played that day?" She stared at the screen for a long time. "Yes," she finally replied. The response came quickly. "I thought so. Thank you for not rushing through it." She smiled. Time passed. She did not become famous. Her life did not turn upside down. But something had shifted beneath the surface. She walked differently now, listened more closely, trusted her instincts a little more. The piano was no longer just a place to hide. It was a place to speak. And she was beginning to understand that being heard did not mean being loud. It meant being true. The invitation came on an ordinary afternoon. It was short and careful, written by someone who did not want to push. A small event, a quiet audience, no pressure. They said they remembered the silence in the hall and wanted to create space for that again. She read the message twice, then she set the phone down and went to the piano. She did not answer right away. Instead, she played. The notes came slowly at first, testing the room, as if asking permission. She listened closely to how the sound moved, how it settled, how it faded. She stopped often, letting the quiet speak back. This had become her way of deciding things. Later that evening, she replied, "I can play," she wrote, "but only if it stays simple." The response came quickly. "That's exactly what we want." The night of the event arrived without excitement. No posters, no long announcements, just a small room with chairs placed carefully, leaving space between rows. The lights were warm. The piano was tuned, but not perfect. She arrived early. A few people nodded politely as she walked in. Some recognized her. Most did not. That was fine. She sat near the front, hands folded, waiting. Her heart beat steadily. The nerves were there, but they no longer ruled her. When it was time, no one asked her to fill space. They asked her to begin. She walked to the piano and sat down, taking a moment before touching the keys. The room was already quiet, not the restless kind, the listening kind. She played. The melody was not the same one from before. This one had grown over time, shaped by evenings alone, by messages she had read and moments she had carried. It moved gently, never trying to prove anything. The audience listened. She felt it again. That deep stillness, the kind that made time feel wide. When she finished, the silence returned, just like before. This time, she smiled. Afterward, people spoke softly. Some thanked her. Some simply nodded. One person said nothing at all, but their eyes were full. She packed up slowly and left the outside. The night air felt kind. In the weeks that followed, she played a few more times. Always small, always intentional. She learned how to say no when things felt wrong. She learned how to say yes without fear. She never chased attention, but it found her anyway. In quiet ways, someone shared her story with a friend. A short clip reached people she would never meet. A few wrote to say her music had helped them pause. Even if only for a minute, she kept those messages. On difficult days, she reread them, not for praise, but for grounding. Life continued. She still worked, still cooked simple meals, still sat at her piano late at night, playing for no one but herself. Music had not become a performance. It had become a bridge. One evening, she returned to the same hall where it had all begun. The building looked the same. The walls, the lights, The worn piano. She stood in the back for a moment, remembering the noise, the distraction, the simple request. She walked to the stage and sat at the piano. No audience. She played the original melody again. It felt complete now, not because it had ended, but because it had found its place. She understood something then. That moment had never been about being discovered. It had been about being ready. Ready to share without apology. Ready to be heard without needing permission. Ready to trust that simple things, offered honestly, could change a room. She closed the piano and stepped away. As she left the hall, she noticed a group of people entering for another event. Laughter echoed. Phones glowed. Life moved forward. She smiled somewhere. Another quiet moment was waiting. And when it arrived, she would meet it the same way she always had, with open hands, with a simple melody.